Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. So excited for this video as we're going to discuss Donovan Mitchell and his future with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Just a little bit over a year ago, the Cavaliers made headlines by trading for Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz, in which they gave up a ton of assets, including now all-star Lauri Markkanen, and there are questions on it, what his future looks like with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and will he consider darting in free agency. And I think because of that, he is a key name to watch for in the 2024 NBA trade deadline landscape. I think Donovan Mitchell perhaps could become the top player available to be had via trade this year, and I think now is a great time for Cleveland to potentially jump in on a Donovan Mitchell trade for a couple of reasons. Now, the beginning of the season hasn't been the start that they've been looking for. They currently sit 7th in the Eastern Conference at the time I'm recording this. Donovan Mitchell did just have another great game. He's been fantastic this season, averaging roughly 29 points a night. He's been stellar for the Cavaliers, who, yes, in defense of them, they've dealt with a ton of different injuries. Evan Mobley missing time, Darius Garland missing time, Jared Allen missed the beginning of the season. It seems like this team just hasn't been healthy. For me, I'm not necessarily selling my stock on the Cavaliers. I think they're a pretty good team. They're within striking distance of the top 4 seeds in the Western, or in the Eastern Conference, excuse me. I believe they only have a 2-game disadvantage behind the Orlando Magic right now. And because of that, I'm not saying that the Cavalier season is over. I'm not saying they're dead in the water. But I am just pointing out that with Donovan Mitchell's contract right now set to expire after the 2024-2025 season, there is some risk here for the Cavaliers if they do not trade him, and right now might be the best time to jump in, because in this trade landscape, perhaps Lauri Markkanen and Zach LaVine are the 2 best players available, which means if you're Cleveland and you were to go ahead and make Donovan Mitchell available in a year with a ton of parity, a ton of teams trying to compete for an NBA championship, your selection of offers might be about as rich as they come, especially with a year and a half of team control. If you wait until the offseason, then it is looked at as an expiring contract, and there's a little bit more risk there. You'd only get 1 playoff run with him instead of 2 if you're the team trading for him. So right now might be their time to kind of go in on a Donovan Mitchell trade, so to speak. And you know, it kind of is tough because they did just trade for him relatively recently. It's almost kind of, you know, saying, hey, this wasn't the move we needed to make, but you're also protecting yourself in the situation that he were to dart for nothing. That would be absolutely devastating for a team with a lot of young talent. And if they go about this trade right, maybe they're able to stock their cupboard full with some more draft assets and some players that fit their current existing core of Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen, so that when the trio is all healthy and you have the right surrounding role players, maybe this team doesn't even get that much worse than they currently are with Donovan Mitchell on the roster, which I think is a real possibility. If you guys do end up enjoying this video and like what you see here at Utility Sports, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content so you don't miss out on future uploads. We're kind of getting into the trade season here. You're going to start seeing more and more trade rumors. You're going to hear a lot of speculation around the internet about who could become available, and I think really Donovan Mitchell is the headline name to watch for this cycle. So let's get into our first of 5 trades, and this one is with the Philadelphia 76ers, and I do want to acknowledge something. Donovan Mitchell does have a little bit of leverage here in trade negotiations, because with 1.5 years left on his contract, if his agent's going around and telling teams, hey, he will extend with you or he won't extend with you, he could perhaps limit or corner his market a little bit to a team that he ultimately does want to go to. And that's kind of what we see here in this package in a trade with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this deal, importantly, cannot be made until at least December 30th at the very earliest, because of the recently traded restrictions on Marcus Morris Sr. and Robert Covington. The 2 of them cannot be aggregated with other salaries right now, but within a week and a half or so, they are able to be traded. So in this deal, we're really waiting, what, 12, 11 days at this point. The 76ers would be landing star guard Donovan Mitchell, and for the Philadelphia 76ers, I've looked at them as a team that we're likely going to see them make a big move this offseason, not necessarily in the actual season. All of that gets thrown out the window if Donovan Mitchell becomes available, because the way Daryl Morey would look at it, we have Joel Embiid, we have Tyrese Maxey, we're going to add to that core with another 30-point per game scorer, and Mitchell, I think, would be a really dynamic fit in Philadelphia. His shot making, his ability to handle the basketball gives them another guy to have the rock in his hands and kind of just really an intriguing fit next to Tyrese Maxey, who you have two super uber athletic guards next to each other. I think it would be a lot of fun to watch. You also get Damian Jones in here for the money purposes. Cleveland cannot take in too much salary just given their tax implications right now. And then Marcus Morris goes back to Cleveland. Expiring contract, $17 million. He's what we call salary filler. Robert Covington, I actually do think could help Cleveland here a little bit, actually, with his skill set, kind of a 3-and-D wing forward who can play a little bit of small ball center. Not that you'd really ask him to do that when you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, but he could be a nice 4 next to either of them when they're the sole big on the court if Cleveland were to lean into that a little bit more. Daniil House Jr. comes in, a small contract, 1 year expiring. And then Jaden Springer, a player who I think could grow into a good point of attack defender. He hasn't been given a ton of opportunity right now. He doesn't have a very long leash there in Philadelphia. He is a former first-round pick, so maybe he's the kind of unproven young player that has some upside in this deal for Cleveland. But really the name of the game here is draft compensation. Philadelphia has a lot of it after the James Harden trade. They now find themselves able to go out and make a move like this where they send 3 first-round picks, one in 2026, one in 2028, and one in 2030, as well as multiple second-rounders to get the deal done here. And again, this is kind of under the assumption that Donovan Mitchell corners his market a little bit and says, I don't want to go here, I'm not going there, get me to Philadelphia. This is a package that, listen, it's not that attractive, to be honest, for Cleveland. This is kind of a loss on value for the Cavaliers, in my estimation, based on what they gave the Utah Jazz for Donovan Mitchell a year ago. The reason that this deal would make some sense is if Donovan Mitchell is, like I said, kind of really limiting what his trade market looks like by demanding to go to 1 or 2 specific cities. And I think Philadelphia could be a team that would be in consideration for that if we do see Donovan Mitchell traded this season. Jumping into our second trade now, and this is one I really like for both sides. This one's with the Indiana Pacers, and I think the in-season tournament championship game was a really great sign of one of the big flaws on Indiana's roster right now. Even though they have a ton of really talented depth, a lot of good players, I've said it multiple times, they have 13, 14 good NBA players, they're missing a number 2 guy on the roster, and it's really clear. Tyrese Haliburton is a star in the making. He's just an absolute joy to watch play. He's so good. He's so talented, plays at a high pace, doesn't turn over the basketball, facilitates for others, and is honestly one of the better shot creators in the NBA. There's not enough respect for his ability to score the basketball, specifically with the efficiency that he does, the degree of difficulty. He's such a good player, but really the one flaw for Indiana is when Haliburton's, 1, not being aggressive, and 2, having the ball forced out of his hands. Who else is going to make the next play? Who's going to set up their teammates? Who's going to be the guy who scores the basketball? Well, getting Donovan Mitchell solves all of that. Now, this is a pretty steep price to pay for Donovan Mitchell. The assumption here is if you're paying this much, if you're Indiana, you would have an extension basically agreed upon where Donovan Mitchell is going to play with Tyrese Haliburton for not just 1.5 years, but for 4, 5, 6 years. And if you're the Pacers and you feel like, hey, we have Haliburton and Mitchell next to each other for the next 5, 6 seasons, that's something worth investing in, and I 100% agree with that for a couple of reasons. Now let's get into the trade assets here and why it makes sense for both sides. Buddy Hield's not just a throw in here. Now I know I talked about Marcus Morris, $17 million salary filler. Buddy Hield's a significantly better player at this point than Marcus Morris because he's a lights out 3-point shooter. Still, a career 40% 3-point shooter on very, very high volume. Basically all of his volume numbers line up with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in terms of how frequently he shoots the basketball, and he does it at a very, very good clip, very quick trigger. And I think for the Cavaliers, one thing that we could point to last year in the playoffs is they just didn't have enough spacing. They addressed that with George Niang and Max Strus in the offseason. Niang's not worked out quite as well as the Strus signing has, but I think Buddy Hield gives you another level to that where not only is he a really good shooter, but he's not afraid of shooting with any type of coverage. He will shoot with a hand right in his face because he's that comfortable as a shooter. And I think that would help kind of alleviate a little bit more spacing concerns with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen playing together. And I think Hield, even though, yes, defensively he has significant limitations, having 2 bigs behind him like Mobley and Allen kind of, again, mitigates some of that. The Cavs are used to playing 2 smaller guards with Garland and Mitchell together. Hield could probably fit in, and honestly, he's a little bit bigger even than Donovan Mitchell. So it's not too crazy of a change. He's not quite as athletic, obviously, but I think his shooting would be still a nice presence on the court this season for the Cavs. Jarris Walker, he's really the main young player in this deal because he's a former top 10 pick. The Pacers drafted him 8th overall in the 2023 NBA draft. I did like his game coming out of Houston. Really talented two-way player. He's got size, length, strength, physicality. Now, he doesn't play into that physicality as much as I think he should, but I think that might come with, you know, kind of his maturity and development as an offensive basketball player. But at about 6'8", 245, 250-ish pounds, he's got the frame that you're looking for a hybrid forward in the NBA, and he's got the skill set to go along with it. I actually just saw him live in person the other day, and honestly, I was right up next to him, and he looks the part. I mean, he's a big, physical, strong dude who has touch. He's able to handle the basketball a bit. He's able to shoot from the perimeter. He was a 3-level scorer when he was playing for the Houston Cougars. He's an impressive player, and I think for him, if you're looking at, hey, if everything goes right, what does he turn into? He turns into a true star. And if the Cavaliers get that out of him, if they get a true star player, this is a home run trade for them, no question. Now, there's also areas where I'm like, well, if Jarris Walker doesn't live fully up to that potential, what is he? Is he a Rui Hachimura? Is he a DeAndre Hunter? What type of player is he? And that's kind of what scared me off of him a little bit during my pre-draft evaluation on him. I didn't dislike him, don't get me wrong. I just wasn't as in love with him as some others were in the draft process, and I could understand all of the positives, all the pros for him. But for me, I preferred a guy like Taylor Hendricks, which I don't think is crazy to say. I think Taylor Hendricks has some safer tools that I would rely on at the NBA level, whereas Jarris Walker maybe has a little bit more upside, a little bit more room to grow, but also maybe a little bit of a lower floor depending on how those tools progress and develop. What does he give you on a night-to-night basis? So there's a little bit of a risk by the Pacers here because he could be so good, but it's also a little bit of a risk by the Cavs because you're giving up Donovan Mitchell in this trade and kind of hoping that Jarris Walker lives up to the hype on what he could potentially become. Jalen Smith is in this deal. I think for the Cavs, just getting another big man who you would trust in your rotation. Part of their playoff deficiencies last year where their two bigs didn't perform. Jared Allen famously afterwards said the lights were too bright, which I couldn't believe he actually said. And then Evan Mobley, I just don't think that they were ready for playoff basketball. They got kind of bullied and outplayed by the New York Knicks last year. Honestly, their physicality really shocked them, I think. So I think getting another big body in there, Jalen Smith, would help a little bit just on the margins. I don't think it's a big part of this, but he's on a small team-friendly contract. Tradable contract gives the Cavs some more flexibility. Then Ben Shepherd, another former first-round pick. The Pacers selected him 26th overall in the 2023 NBA draft out of Belmont, and honestly, my comparison for him before the draft was a Tyrese Halliburton light. He's not Halliburton. He's the free version of Tyrese Halliburton. He's what mom would say we have at home for Tyrese Halliburton. And listen, he's not as good as Halliburton, but he's got a very similar build. 6'6". He's a tall, lengthy guard. Probably more of a combo guard than a true point guard in the NBA. I think in college, he was able to handle the ball and run an offense. I'm not sure if a team's going to lean into that in the NBA, but he's really capable of shooting. He's a good offensive player. Defensively, you're still waiting on him taking some steps forward, but I'm telling you, this guy's really fluid. He's got really good hip change of direction capabilities, and honestly, I think he's a smart player. So anytime you're working with someone who can shoot, is smart, and is fluid and mobile, you're probably got a good player on your hands, and I think that's what Ben Shepherd's going to grow into. Honestly, next to Darius Garland, the fact that he is 6'6", has some actual length and size, makes him maybe a really good long-term fit next to their backcourt as it currently exists. In this deal, you also get 3 first-round picks, 2024 first. It's the latest of the following teams: the Thunder, Rockets, Clippers, or Jazz. So it's probably a pick in the mid to late 20s. 2024 first via the Indiana Pacers. That pick is probably anywhere from 17 to 24 if I had to currently guess. Don't hold me to that. There's a lot of season left to be played. Maybe it could end up a little bit higher. Maybe it could end up a little bit lower. You never really know. And a 2026 unprotected first round pick as well from the Indiana Pacers. Now, I know Pacers fans are looking at this and saying, whoa, that's a lot to give up. And I completely understand that perspective because you are giving up 2 guys who are just first round picks. You're giving up 3 more first round picks on top of it. There's a reason that this works really well for the Pacers. And you guys know I wouldn't just be throwing this out there for whatever reason. Giving up this collection of assets is not that bad for Indiana. You're looking at 2 picks, probably anywhere from the late teens to the mid 20s in this year's draft. and you're giving up a 2026 first. Because of this, because of how close those next 2 firsts are, you're keeping a lot of your long-term flexibility. Trading off Jarvis Walker, that really hurts. You'd love to sit and wait and see what he becomes. You'd love to sit and wait and see what Ben Shepherd becomes. But you're kind of putting the risk on Indiana of, okay, do these guys live up to their potential or not? And if not, then Cleveland's the team that is kind of sitting with that risk. If you trade him, you know what you're getting in Donovan Mitchell, which is a top 20-ish player in the NBA, and you're pairing him with another top 20-ish player in the NBA. That's a really good recipe for success. I think their 2 skill sets work really well together. And again, you still have that flexibility going forward after the 2024 NBA draft. You have 3 tradable first-round picks again. You're in a really good spot in terms of making moves. And with that reasoning, like, you're going to be able to go out and make more trades. If you need a 2-way wing, maybe you're still in the market for OG Anunoby. You could still operate with cap space potentially. This doesn't really hurt your long-term financial flexibility too much as long as you're kind of smart. Maybe they turn down Bruce Brown's team option. That could be a pathway to opening up money if they wanted to go that way. The Pacers still have a lot of flexibility even after making this type of trade. Now, if you told me, hey, they're not giving up the 2024 first, they're giving up 2028 and 2030, then I would say definitely not. You can't do this because of all your long-term flexibility. You're taking a big risk, and you don't know exactly how it's going to play out, and you don't have ways to pivot out of it. With the 2024 first, you have ways to pivot, and I think that's a big thing here. The Pacers have a ton of depth already. Jarvis Walker, Ben Shepherd really don't even have roles on the team right now. You're essentially turning Buddy Hield's minutes into Donovan Mitchell minutes, and that's a significant upgrade on this current roster, which, by the way, is already really good. Going on to our 3rd team here in the video, and it's a team that everyone wants to know about. Is Donovan Mitchell going to be a New York Knick? I'm not exactly sure, but to be honest, if I was running the Cavaliers, this is an offer that would really pause me and make me think, is this something we want to do? And getting RJ Barrett on what I think is not that bad of a contract, mid-20s in terms of how much money he's making a year, with the new CBA and where the salary cap is at, it's not a bad contract. It really isn't. Emmanuel Quickley, before restricted free agency, he comes in here. Everyone really started to love Emmanuel Quickley last year. Thought he was a little overbuzzed when all of the extreme hype started to come around for Quickley. I do think he's a really good young player, and I think he'd be a kind of staple in this type of trade. And I think this is arguably the best trade package you'll see in this entire video. Daquan Jeffries and Miles McBride are in here as well to help facilitate the money, make the money work here. And then when it comes to draft compensation, 3 first-round picks here from the Knicks, 1 in 2024 via the Dallas Mavericks. The Knicks' own first-round pick in 2025, completely unprotected, and then 2027 first-round pick, top 10 protected. Since the Knicks are giving up RJ Barrett, who's one of the better young players in this entire video, to be included in a trade package, and they're also giving up Quickley, I figured they don't have to give up 3 unprotected first. They give up 2 here in this, and then kind of a heavier protected first in 2027. And for me, I think Barrett would be a nice wing piece for the Cavs playing off the catch. I think he's somebody who he attacks closeouts well. I think he's still getting a little bit better as a shooter. Now I think night-to-night basis, it's a little streaky and consistent still. Quickley would be a really nice backup guard for Cleveland. I think this kind of reshapes their depth a little bit. You're getting 2 real rotation players for the cost of 1, which I think strengthens one of the Cavaliers' weak spots, which is just overall depth. And I think the kind of sudden disappearance of Ricky Rubio impacted that as well. So getting Quickley and Barrett in this deal does help them. You get some of those picks back that you traded for Donovan Mitchell. And honestly, you're kind of washing your hands of the whole Donovan Mitchell experience at a net like 0. Obviously, people are going to say, oh, Lauri Markkanen, he's so good. He wasn't doing that for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I just don't really know if he ever was going to do that for the Cavaliers. He obviously, furthered his career, broke out big time with the Jazz. I just can't really look at that and say, oh, the Cavaliers got fleeced, or just Lauri Markkanen wasn't playing like an all-star in Cleveland. He just wasn't. I don't know if he ever was going to. And because of that, you're just kind of back to where you were. RJ Barrett Quickley, you've furthered the development of some of your young guys with Garland, and obviously Mobley, Allen getting some playoff experience, and now you're at a spot where maybe you're trying to build more of a cohesive unit on the floor, and I think Barrett and Quickley can contribute to that for sure. Team number 4 now, and this maybe is one of the worst case scenarios for the New York Knicks, not only because in this scenario would they not get Donovan Mitchell, but they'd see him go to the in-state rival Brooklyn Nets. And you might say, well, what's the big deal with that? It's the same exact thing that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant did to the Knicks just a few years ago. And the Knicks don't like it when they see star players go to a smaller market in the same area, same region. And the Nets, maybe they're able to pull something off here for Donovan Mitchell, because they've got a ton of assets as well and a ton of players that I think the Cavaliers would be interested in. Spencer Dinwiddie, one of the better backup guards in the NBA. He has started quite a bit for the Nets this year and last year once they acquired him, but I think really his best role is coming off the bench as a sixth-man spark plug, microwave scoring type. And I think with Cleveland, he would be kind of thrusted back into that role. And then Dorian Finney-Smith, I think just a phenomenal fit if he were to play in Cleveland. The Cavaliers, listen, they have one of the most freakish defenders in the NBA in Evan Mobley. He's a special talent, can defend all across the floor. He's a really great player, but I think that they need one more perimeter defensive-minded guy, and Dorian Finney-Smith gives you that at a really high level. Think back to when the Mavericks made a run in the Western Conference. Toward the Western Conference Finals, they ultimately did lose to the Golden State Warriors, but Dorian Finney-Smith, every single night of that playoff run, he was guarding the other team's best player and impacted that series in significant ways throughout the playoffs, specifically against Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz, where ultimately DFS and the Mavs got the last laugh in that one. I think he would be so good in Cleveland because of his willingness to spot up in the corner, play off the catch. Right now, you know, I think he's probably taken a step back in terms of what he is as a defender. A couple of years ago, I thought he was a real all-defense candidate type piece for the Mavericks. And with Brooklyn, kind of part of the reason why Dallas traded him to begin with is he had taken a small step back defensively. And that small step, when you're not a great offensive player, is a pretty big deal. So you're not trading for an all-defense caliber player here if you're Cleveland, but you're getting a really good role player. You have years of control, and he's a good fit into your roster. I think it does make a ton of sense, as well as getting a couple of other pieces in here. Get Harry Giles, he's in here to make the money work. You're flipping Damian Jones and Ty Jerome out. The money obviously very tight right now in Cleveland, so every little bit matters. But Dariq Whitehead's really the interesting factor here for me if I'm a Cavs fan, because I like Dariq Whitehead quite a bit. He was National High School Player of the Year back in his senior year at Montverde Academy, went on to play at Duke, ended up sustaining a foot injury, but played through it, shot over 40% from three despite the injury. Now, he didn't have as much production as he would have liked, only averaged about 9 points a game, but the kid can shoot, and I think, you know, with the way the Cavaliers have been operating, it's all about adding shooting to this core. Dorian Finney-Smith can shoot. Dinwiddie can shoot. Dariq Whitehead can shoot. They drafted Emoni Bates in the second round. He's been lights out in the G League, shooting a ton of threes per game at a very, very high clip. And I think over time, after the Strus signings and the George Niang signings, I mean, this team has just really reinvigorated itself with shooting. After making a trade like this, I can't see the Cavaliers being a bad team. They've got Darius Garland, who is your offensive engine. Maybe Evan Mobley can take a step forward offensively with kind of refined spacing and a refined role. Jarrett Allen, I think, still a really good rim protection big and a lob threat. He does a lot of nice things. He's a good screen setter. I think this team could still be really, really good. They have an offensive identity. They've got defensive pieces that can be really, really good. Of course, last year they were the top defense in the NBA. I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of reinvent themselves on the defensive end of the floor after some of these trades. But on top of that, you're still getting the draft assets. 3 future far-out first-round picks, 2027 first from Phoenix and Philadelphia, and a 2029 first from Phoenix as well. Who knows where the Suns are going to be at by 2029. Devin Booker's contract, who knows where he'll be. Maybe he'll still be in Phoenix, and then that pick's a little bit less valuable, but perhaps not. Kevin Durant will be basically 40 years old at that point. That's a long ways away. 2029 is a while out. So perhaps that turns into a really valuable asset for the Cavaliers to go along with the 2029 second rounder to add in a little bit more value. Again, this maybe isn't as strong of a deal in terms of what players you're getting if you're Cleveland, but I think the draft picks could end up being substantially better here in this trade if you do send Donovan Mitchell to Brooklyn. And for the Nets, I do just want to quickly touch on this. We know what Donovan Mitchell is. He's a really great offensive player, 29 point per game guy, but I think this would really redefine roles there in Brooklyn quite a bit. Donovan Mitchell would be your go-to offensive shot creator, shot maker. He would really run the offense and be your go-to guy. Cam Thomas has done a great job in that role at times this year as well. Cam Thomas being a bench spark plug microwave would be really dangerous as well, just because when he catches fire, it almost seems like nobody can stop him from scoring the ball. But Mikal Bridges really has been asked to be the #1 scorer. And while, yes, he has increased all of his own production, he's had some really awesome moments with the Nets. Last year, he was just on fire after coming over from the Suns. He's always available. He's just a great player to have. He's probably better suited as like a number 2 or a number 3 scoring option than a true number 1 guy. And I think getting Donovan Mitchell, not only are you adding a really great player, but I think you're asking your currently best player to maybe take a small step back in terms of his usage. And I think because of that, you're going to get a better product from him as well on both ends of the floor. And I think with the Nets' current, kind of accumulation, of defensive pieces like Nick Claxton, Royce O'Neal, obviously Mikal Bridges himself, but you've also got Cam Johnson, who I think is a competitive, solid defender. Ben Simmons when he's healthy. I think the Nets can afford Donovan Mitchell not being the best defensive player, and obviously that's no question. Donovan Mitchell gives you such a transition threat. He scores a ton in fast break opportunities. I think he just kind of opens up the Nets offense in a way that they're not going to be able to open it up regardless. And our final team here now is a team really worth talking about, and that is the Miami Heat. They struck out on everybody, seemingly within the last year or so, specifically Damian Lillard. They struck out on Drew Holiday. There were reports, are they going to be interested in Bradley Beal or not? I think they made the right choice by not being interested in Bradley Beal. I would not have traded for Bradley Beal myself. I was surprised the Wizards were able to extract as much as they did from Phoenix in that trade. But here the Heat finally get a guy. They get Donovan Mitchell, someone who for a long time has said how much he looks up to Dwayne Wade. Well, Wade County is now going to be Donovan Mitchell County if he goes to Miami. And I think this is a really good kind of starting point for Miami. Now you could argue, does Tyler Hero have to be in this package? I think there's a lot that you could go back and forth on. This, to me, the package I have on the screen here for you is, again, centered around the idea that Donovan Mitchell is forcing his way to the Miami Heat. So what does that package entail? Expiring contract in Kyle Lowry. I actually do think he could help the Cavaliers as an off-the-bench point guard behind Darius Garland. Smart, steps in, takes charges, runs an offense, does really a lot of the little things well that does contribute to winning. Kyle Lowry has not been valued enough throughout his career. I think he would be really, really good in Cleveland. Although, yes, again, that's not the big part of the trade here. It's just, kind of a small little incentive for the Cavs, who, even after a Donovan Mitchell trade, would still be trying to compete and win as many games as possible. Nikola Jovic comes in this deal. I liked him quite a bit in the 2022 NBA draft. He's got a really smooth stroke. He can shoot the ball from the perimeter. He's got length and size. Defensively, he's a little challenged, but I think with Cleveland's current infrastructure, kind of like what we talked about with Donovan Mitchell going to Brooklyn, I think Cleveland has the infrastructure to kind of fit around Jovic. You can play him as a 4 next to Mobley. You can play him as a 4 next to Allen. And I think with constant rim protection next to him, you can comfortably play him on the perimeter a little bit more than Miami does defensively. Haywood Highsmith, really good individual perimeter defender, one of the better point of attack defenders in the NBA. His minutes right now are a little in flux with the Miami Heat, but I do think a guy with really quick hands, really quick feet, probably could find minutes pretty quickly with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Orlando Robinson, a depth big. To me, if you're the Cavs, you're getting younger, moving off of Damian Jones for Orlando Robinson. I do think that's a little bit of an upgrade, and you save some money as well, which is pretty important there. And then you get 2 first-round picks and 1 first-round pick swap. Again, this kind of hinges on Donovan Mitchell cornering his market and saying, the only team I'm willing to sign an extension with is the Miami Heat. And if that happens, then you try and get as much as you can from Miami and you kind of pack it up. Portland chose not to operate that way. Both times when they traded Drew Holiday and when they traded Damian Lillard, it's possible we could see Cleveland do the same thing and avoid trading him to Miami in general. But if the Heat make all of this available, and if Donovan Mitchell says, I'm going to sign with Miami in a year, this is probably the Cavaliers' best option then. There's a little bit more pressure Mitchell can put on his franchise than what we saw Damian Lillard do, because Damian Lillard was under contract for a very long time. Donovan Mitchell, that is not the case. Just a year and a half left on his contract. He can get where he wants to go if he so decides. So that'll be something that's worth watching. Where does Donovan Mitchell play as early as maybe this trade deadline? I hope you guys really did enjoy this video. Make sure to comment down below which trade was your favorite. Maybe let me know a hypothetical trade down in the comment section as well. Thanks again so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. We're in trade season. I'm so excited for it. We're past December 15th, and we're at a spot of the year where things can get a little crazy pretty quickly. We're going to have more trade deadline coverage here between now and the NBA trade deadline, so make sure you're around for that content. Go check out some of those other videos on the channel as well, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.